The government of Israel attempted to prevent Amnesty International from releasing a report accusing the country of engaging in apartheid, but Amnesty International just today decided to release the report anyway, and it is pretty damning. I can totally understand why Israel would not want this report to come out. Now, this was after a 4-year-long investigation by Amnesty International in partnership with Human Rights Watch and Israeli rights group B'Tselem. Now, here's what we know based on the report. The comprehensive report, Israel's Apartheid Against Palestinians, Cruel Systems of Domination and Crime Against Humanity, sets out how massive seizures of Palestinian land and property, unlawful killings, forcible transfer, drastic movement restrictions, and the denial of nationality and citizenship to Palestinians are all components of a system which amounts to apartheid under international law. They also write that this system is maintained by violations which Amnesty International found to constitute apartheid as a crime against humanity as defined in the Rome Statute and Apartheid Convention. And so they point to very specific instances, including discriminatory policies within Israel and in annexed East Jerusalem. They write about Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip. They also point to the de facto annexation of the West Bank, where the government of Israel exerts overall control and is actively building and expanding Jewish settlements that most of the international community considers illegal. And we're gonna go to a video that helps you visualize some of this in just a moment, but this is a damning report to say the least, and the real question is what the international response will be to it. There are some suggestions in regard to what Amnesty International believes the United States and other major powers should do to basically end this apartheid. I don't think the United States is gonna do a damn thing about it. They want the International Criminal Court to also be involved in investigating this. We'll see how that plays out. But Cenk, what do you think? I mean, I am noticing a change in the way various organizations and even media talks about the situation on the ground in Israel.
Yeah, well, you'll be punished if you're honest here, but Israel has had a headlock on American media and American politics for decades. Anna, I think, is right that headlock is now loosening. And I would actually give credit to a lot of Jewish progressives who said these constant charges of anti-Semitism are just not merited. And that has given space for people to say, yeah, if there's any kind of racism or bigotry here, it looks like it's being done to the Palestinians, not to the Israelis. And that is actually fairly obvious unless you're being gaslit for decades that the people that are being occupied are somehow the oppressors. That makes no sense in the rational world. I'm glad that we're beginning to snap out of it. So now, is Israel an apartheid system at this point? The answer is obviously yes. So, I mean, think about the core of what they're saying. We cannot let the Gaza Strip have control its own borders. We're gonna blockade it, and we're not gonna allow it to have its own military, its own defenses, its own borders, and the West Bank is still under our control. So those are all open air prisons. And why? Because the Palestinians cannot be trusted to not be violent. Well, that is by definition racist. They're saying these people as a whole, millions of them, are untrustworthy. That if we allow them to be free for even a minute, they will turn to violence. While ironically, they have used overwhelming and oppressive violence against that group for 55 years now. Those are facts. They might make you uncomfortable, but they are indisputable. Israel is not occupied, Palestine is occupied. So Israel, in its response to Amnesty International, did the usual absurdities. First, it's anti-Semitic. No, you've overused that excuse 1 billion times. Is there real anti-Semitism in the world? A ton of it, a ton of it. And right now there's massive growing anti-Semitism in America. Synagogues are getting attacked, etc. right? So Do not use that phrase for your political purposes when it's real and it's a massive problem that is growing every day in America. But the Palestinians and Amnesty International are not being anti-Semitic to Israel. They're the ones that are occupied. No, the Israeli government is saying, you people cannot rule yourselves, you're savages. And all you understand is violence. No, you're the racist ones, that's just a fact. And I hate that that's true, but it is true. So the second absurd claim they had was Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and other human rights groups are all denying our right to exist. No, they're not.
Not true at
they
all.
didn't say that at all, you're lying. And there is one country denying the existence of another. Snap out of it, you should know the answer. Israel is denying the existence of the Palestinian territories by not allowing them to be a state. How do they not allow them? They roll in tanks and kill them. Where's the question? Don't tell me about, look, the existence of Israel is important, it should not be questioned, okay? But you don't get to say, hey, I'm theoretically questioning my existence, when in reality I have tons and tons of nukes to back me up and ain't nobody gonna take it from us, right? But you, I'm not gonna let you have a state because I'm racist against you and I think you're savage. And then talk about the existence of a state. You're blocking their existence right now. Snap out of it, America. On this issue, there is no question, Israel is not the good guys and they're not a democracy.
So along with this report, Amnesty International also released a video to kind of help people interested in this story visualize what the conditions are like for Palestinians and how they're sectioned off and fragmented in various parts in this area, right? So let's take a quick look at that video and then I'll give you some specific examples that were noted in the report to make the case that there is in fact an apartheid system.
Where do all the Palestinians live now? 3.4 million live outside of Israel and the occupied territories, mainly in refugee camps in neighboring countries. 2.5 million Palestinians live in Israel and East Jerusalem, restricted to enclaves that make up around 3% of the entire area. 3 million Palestinians live in the occupied West Bank, but are only allowed to access 40% of the land to live and work. The rest of the area is for the Jewish Israeli settlers only. 2 million are trapped in the Gaza Strip, one of the most densely populated areas in the world. Fragmentation of the Palestinian society and the dispossession of their lands are key pillars of Israel's apartheid system to maintain domination and control.
Now, clearly, in response to that, Palestinians protest. And when they do, they're usually met with brutality and violence. For instance, and this was outlined in the Amnesty International report, in 2018, Palestinians in Gaza began to hold weekly protests along the border with Israel, calling for the right of return for refugees and an end to the blockade. Before protests even began, senior Israeli officials warned that Palestinians approaching the wall would be shot. By the end of 2019, Israeli forces had killed 214 civilians, including 46 children. And so in response to their findings, Amnesty International is calling for international action to ensure that Palestinians live lives of dignity, that their human rights are supported and protected. And so it calls for countries like the United States to stop enabling the Israeli government with weaponry and with funding. Governments who continue to supply Israel with arms and shield it from accountability at the United Nations are supporting a system of apartheid undermining the international legal order and exacerbating the suffering of the Palestinian people. And here's what else the report recommends. Amnesty International is calling on the International Criminal Court, the ICC, to consider the crime of apartheid in its current investigation in the occupied Palestinian territories and calls on all states to exercise universal jurisdiction to bring perpetrators of apartheid crimes to justice. What they're recommending makes sense. It's not gonna happen. And it's for many of the reasons that we've talked about on the show repeatedly. I mean, you have, legalized bribery in this country. You have well-funded groups that have one objective and one objective only, in ensuring that we protect our relationship with Israel at any and all costs, continue to provide foreign aid to Israel with no conditions, no strings attached. And it's really, really hard to fight back against that. You know, the system of legalized bribery in the United States is what fuels many of the foreign policy foibles that we see by our government.
Yeah, in terms of our reaction, we will have none except to shun Amnesty International, not the government that's doing the apartheid. So this is by the way, I have personal experience with how this propaganda works, because when I was growing up as a kid under the influence of honestly Turkish propaganda, when Amnesty International did reports about torture in Turkey, the government of Turkey would do propaganda saying, oh, Amnesty International is working with foreigners and terrorists and against the interests of Turks. And we were told that we were supposed to hate Amnesty International because they were biased against us. That, of course, is nonsense, total utter nonsense. That's what every government says that's actually doing terrible things that human rights groups are calling out. So I don't say that just in relationship to Israel now and their reaction, but to the American reaction. They have a 0% chance of caring about this, because honestly, and this is deeply uncomfortable, and Ilhan Omar was sanctioned for pointing out the super obvious, in America, everyone has lobbyists, and some are more powerful than others. And so drug companies have the biggest lobbyists. I give dozens of examples. In this case, there's a group called the AIPAC that's been doing it for decades. Now there's another group called Democratic Majority for Israel. We just did a story yesterday unrelated to this. They're going in and declaring we're going to basically buy 15 legislators. We're going to pour in millions of dollars, and then they're going to owe us. And they claim proudly, we will make the difference in these races, and then they will have to support Israel unilaterally. And those candidates, a lot of them whom are incumbent American politicians in the United States Congress right now, have public quotes where they say they will not question Israel, that their bond is unbreakable. It doesn't matter what Israel does. So American politicians are very literally bought by Israel. And I hate to say that, because there's old anti-Semitic tropes about how the Jews do this universally. They do not. Most of the donors are not at all Jewish in America. They're a tiny, tiny percentage of it. But in this case, and it isn't about Jewish people overall, Democratic Majority for Israel is targeting Jewish legislators.
Yep.
Okay, but is it a lobby on behalf of a foreign government that completely controls those politicians that make the difference in America? The answer is yes, yes. So Israel does have apartheid, and America will do absolutely nothing about it.
Well, by the way, pretending to care about human rights abuses in other countries.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all propaganda. Yeah. Hey, Venezuela and Iran have a lot of oil we'd like ExxonMobil to have contracts with, so they're the bad guys. They're the bad guys. Saudi Arabia is a vicious dictatorial fundamentalist government. Oh, they sell us oil for cheap? Yeah, they're good guys. And by the way, not to you and me. The deal is with the American oil companies. Those are the guys that are getting rich, not us, right? So as long as you butter up American companies and you butter up American politicians, you can pretty much buy anything here. So in this case, America's foreign policy is very clear. I hope one day progressives will overturn that, and that's exactly why that lobby is attacking progressives all across the country. They're like, we don't want our lock on American politicians to be broken. And that is what's at stake, and reporters barely ever cover it. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.